Awesome. Hey, everybody. Good evening and welcome back after our 1 week hiatus to Punch, Kick, Choke Chat. I am so excited to be here tonight. You'll notice I have a slightly different background. My lady and I are on a road trip through La Belle Provence, the gorgeous parks of Quebec, and we came down to Quebec City tonight just for this. And I said my only requirement on our trip is I have killer Wi-Fi in a hotel because I'm so excited for tonight. And we're going to get to our introductions of Grandmaster Wallace in a little bit. But I just want to say how excited I am to be here. The week off always feels a little tough. I'm like, wait, it's Thursday night and I'm not with my crew, which has become all of you. And especially I'm going to throw it, as I do every week, to Sensei Suino. So I get the honor of introducing him each week. He's an 8th Dan in Iaido. He's a 6th Dan in Judo. He's a 5th Dan in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. And I've mentioned that he's an author. Sensei Suino, I'm looking at you right now. I read The Drinking Game this week in various campsites.
Awesome.
It is phenomenal. I love this book, and I am in no way surprised that the narrator central character has an ability to blend in with what he perceives as greatness and just study the old ways and move towards something that others maybe don't realize matters as much as he does. And I'm not surprised that's the central character you wrote as the narrator. So if you haven't read any of Sensei Suino's novels, do yourself a favor, grab one. I can't wait to read any others he's written because this was just a treat on my trip. Sensei Suino, how are you this week?
Man, Sean, I'm doing great. It's good to see your face, and I'm extremely envious of your travels. Thanks for that intro. Yeah, I am. It's so funny, isn't it? I don't know how long we've been doing this, not that many months, and yet the Thursdays off just feel terrible now. These are the highlights of my week, despite all the cool things that we do. It's so great to be able to see each of you. And of course, to meet new martial artists every week is just incredible. It falls to me to introduce Sensei Randy Dauphin, who everybody sort of knows. He's become the modern statesperson of North American martial arts. He knows everybody, he introduces everybody, and he's made this whole thing happen by sheer force of will. I always struggle for what to say. We've been training together for many, many years in Iaido and karate. The who's teaching who goes back and forth. We view the world in a very similar way, which is to say that if you put enough into what you do, then you're going to get a lot more out of it. 2 + 2 in martial arts or in life often doesn't equal 4. Sometimes it equals 7 if you put enough into each of those things that you're doing. And I kind of polled some of Randy's students this week because I was running out of things to say. And there's a very similar theme that keeps coming back, which is to say that Randy is, almost everybody says about Randy, he's most himself when he's teaching. And I think that's wonderful. I've been in the room with him when he's teaching. And they also say something that I've said about him, which is he is one of the best martial arts students I've ever met. Despite his high rank and his lofty accomplishments, when he steps into a room and he's learning from somebody, he's there fully. And that's a wonderful gift. It means you learn faster. It also means that people like me who teach feel the sense of duty to contribute even more. 2 things that radiate out from that. So Randy is one of the best martial arts students I've ever met. I always remember what he told me about his kid. He said, Benny, if you want to be serious about hockey, there's only one thing I ask of you. When that coach blows the whistle, I want you to be the first one on one knee, looking up at that coach with your eyes open and your ears open, right? And do everything he absolutely says. That's no surprise. And I'm going to destroy the quotation, but Hanchi Legacy also says, right, and is one of the best martial arts students I've ever met, also says you step on the mat and the space that's occupied by your feet on the tatami is what you already know, and everything else is what you don't know yet. I can't think of a better way to approach a life in martial arts than by emptying your cup completely. And I'm just really pleased and proud to once again be able to welcome Sensei Dauphin, Randy, as co-host of this, and to pass it off to him. Here's the baton. Take it away.
Thanks so much for that, Sensei. That's a great introduction, and that's one of the longest ones I've ever received. Definitely nothing about my crooked nose or or my weird smile, but thank you very much for that, Sensei. I really love doing this. I'm happy that when this, you know, Sensei Suino always says it's me, but I don't see it that way. I just see it that I had this spark of an idea, and all of us together are making it happen. And so it's all of ours. I always get to, I guess because it was my spark of an idea, I always get to introduce Hanshi Legacy, and I always get to introduce our guest, which is Grandmaster Bill Wallace, Superfoot Wallace. So first, I just want to mention some things about Sensei Legacy. You know, the last time when I introduced him, I talked about what an amazing sensei he was. I talked about how both on and off the tatami, the things that he is willing to do for his students to help them achieve their goals or their mission. And oftentimes he knows what the goals and the missions that they should have more than they do themselves, which I think is a great gift for a sensei, to be able to know something about the students more than they know of themselves. He's had some of the greatest teachers around, you know, names that everybody knows. People on this call will know people like Harold Warden and Benny Allen. He trained extensively with Wally Slokey, Richard Kim, and currently he spends his time, his sensei is Sensei Anthony Sandoval. He's traveled into Okinawa and Japan to train, as has Sensei Suino. And one thing I want to share with everybody, just a great moment, a great COVID moment. Normally, Sensei Legacy and I last week would have been spending all of our time at the Elwood Conservation Area training young children in martial arts. It's an overnight camp that has run for over 40 years. And I'm blessed to have been helping him with it for 25 years. And this year we couldn't do it. And we received so many calls and messages about, I can't believe this isn't happening. These are people now who are an impact on a life. These are people now who are grown men and grown women who are saying, I can't believe camp isn't happening this year. But I'm really proud that I had the opportunity to go down to camp with Sensei Legacy and just train alone with him under the trees in the camp for a couple of hours and discuss martial arts and where things are going in our association and where things are going in martial arts. I always say it, he's like my dad. I'm so blessed to have him in my life, and he's given me a life that I could have not had without him. So those are the things I have to say about Sensei Legacy, Hanshi Legacy. And now I'm gonna try and introduce Grandmaster Sensei Bill Wallace, Superfoot Wallace. It's hard. Like when I was doing this, I wrote pages and pages of stuff, and I'm like, the whole thing will be done by the time I read all of this, and I can't do that. So, you know, there are so many things to find truly inspiring about Sensei Wallace. I'm going to just read a whole bunch of stuff that I find to be extremely inspiring. He's a 10th Dan, period, in martial arts, as was Hanshi Legacy. That's it. That's the pinnacle of rank that you can receive. And he's a legit 10th Dan, not out of the back of a catalog or something like that. He's a multi-time champion in both karate point sparring. He's the middleweight, was the middleweight, but once the champion, always the champion. Once the champ, always the champ. That's what somebody said to me once. The middleweight world champion for 6 years, undefeated, beat everybody that he fought, undefeated, left the ring undefeated. He's an author. Multi-time author. He's a movie star. If you don't know, you could go watch Force of One of my favorites with Chuck Norris. I love that movie, but that's only one of many.
All right, thank you very much. I died in that movie.
Well, that's only one of the movies that you've done. And I know Sensei Sean Benson is jealous of the people that you've got to act with and the movies that you've been in. He aspires to do that. Something I always value is education. Sensei Wallace has a master's degree in kinesiology and physiology. I always find people who achieve a high level in education to be inspiring. You know, you can tell a lot about a person by the company that they keep, and he is good friends with so many names: Joe Louis, Chuck Norris, Jackie Chan, John Belushi, John Terry, and Wally Slokey, Cesar Burkowski. here's a name that probably none of you have heard. He was good friends with Elvis Presley, right? So you can tell a lot about a person by the company that they keep. He is the Black Belt Magazine Fighter of the Year, and then a few years later, he was the Man of the Year. If you're a UFC fan, I encourage you to go back to UFC #1, The Ultimate Fighter #1, where Sensei Bill Wallace with Sensei Cynthia Rothrock was the, I'm sorry, was it Kathy Long or Cynthia Rothrock? Kathy Long? Yeah, so I'm sorry. With Kathy Long, they were the announcers of the very first Ultimate Fighter, the very first UFC. So that's a lot of inspiring things about Sensei Wallace. I always like to give my impressions. I don't know Sensei Wallace for a long time. We met last November when Sensei Legacy was inducted into the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame. He was there supporting the charity, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and he was fighting Sensei Wally Slokey for charity. Sensei Wallace is 74 years old, and he still got in the ring and fought for charity. Great, that's so inspiring. When I first saw him, I saw him just standing in a crowd of people. And it's one of those moments where I look and that's Sensei Bill Superfoot Wallace standing there. That's this person that I've watched all these fights and looked through Black Belt Magazine and seen on the cover of Black Belt Magazine. That's him standing right there. That's the guy. And I remember being kind of dumbfounded about it. But the first two things that I noticed about him was, one, he was wearing a Harley Davidson jacket. I love that. I'm a big Harley Davidson guy, as is Sensei Legacy. I love that Harley Davidson jacket. The other thing that I noticed about him right away is when he saw me looking at him, he smiled and he made himself approachable. He instantly smiled at me and allowed me to approach him. That smile was the thing that allowed me to approach him. And through the whole weekend, he was always available to everybody for 3 days. And there were thousands of people there. And he was always smiling and he was always available to everybody. And to me, that is greatness. That is greatness personified. He never acted great because he didn't have to, because he is great. Personally, I'm a student of history. And one criticism I have of anybody who says they're a student of history, I would challenge you to make sure that you don't look past the masters of today that are right in front of you to the masters of the past. So the masters of the past, people like Matsumura, Itosu, Miyagi, Jigoro Kano, Yamaguchi Sensei, they all had reach, they all had charisma, they all had ability, they all had intelligence. Sensei Wallace is the same as all of those people. He is the same as all of those people. And the one thing where you can admire somebody for their physical greatness, I said this to Sensei Legacy just the other day. The thing I always find most inspiring about the masters that are standing here today is their dedication. Their discipline and dedication to just coming back over and over and over again. And Sensei Bill Wallace, Superfoot Wallace, is inspiring with his dedication and his dedication. Decades of training, decades of fighting, decades of teaching. I can't help but smile when I think about it and hope I can live up to those similar expectations and those, and it's my belief that when the history is written, his name is going to appear next to those other names. People like Miyagi Chojin and Itoshi Yatsutsune and Sokan Bushi Matsumura. Bill Wallace will be another master's name written with all of those people when all of us are gone. And that is my introduction for Grandmaster and Sensei Bill Superfoot Wallace.
Thanks, Sensei Dauphin.
Not talking anymore. I'm too good.
Ah, what are you gonna do after that? Everybody watching, quick housekeeping notes because I don't want to waste any time. If you have any questions, there's a chat button at the bottom of your screen. Fire them through to Robert Schlumsky, who's running this thing and who's really the wizard behind why you can see us all and integrate with us. Send those to us. And also, this is called Punch, Kick, Choke, Chat. This is 5 people on the screen shooting the shit, hanging out. If any of the content bothers you, you can log off. You can talk to your pastor about it and feel better in the morning. But for now, we're just 5 gentlemen talking the way we would talk in a coffee shop. And as I've talked about a lot, and as we've heard tonight, when you get to hang around with some senseis having a chat, sometimes it's real nice just to be like, great, I'm going to let this roll no matter what they get to. Sensei Wallace, how does it feel? Okay, how does it feel to be introduced? You know these things are true. You know that this is the career you've had, the life you've had. But still, how does it feel when you're sitting here and you're being lauded like this by people you just want to have a chat with?
Okay, most of us that ever competed or that ever took the first step into a dojo or a dojang or a kun or any kind of a school, you had no idea what was going to happen. You wanted to take a class and you said, hey, this sounds like it's kind of fun. Like I said earlier, I was a wrestler in high school and college. And when I joined the service, they didn't have a wrestling team, but they had a judo team. And if you watch judo and you watch wrestling, it's very similar. So I started playing judo at Wordsmith Air Force Base in Oscoda, Michigan. And because of my wrestling background, I was really good on the ground with the Osai Komiwaza and Shimiwazas and things like that. So that was fun. And then all of a sudden, I started representing the United States Air Force back in and representing the United States Air Force. And then all of a sudden, I'm at this place and I tear my knee up. No matter what you say, a good big man will always beat a good little man. I was working on a throw called Seotoshi, which is a body drop throw. You come in here and you drop the guy over your leg, and it's like a tripping movement. But anyway, he dropped right on my knee and tore the medial collateral ligament. So right off the bat, back in 1965, 66, there was no such thing as arthroscopic surgery. Back then it was called exploratory. And they wanted to do that. This was in San Bernardino, California. So I'm there and I'm going, well, hey, I don't know this. No, you're not going to do it. I don't want anybody to cut my knee open just to see what's wrong with it. So I'm there. I'm walking around in a cast. And, I'm thinking, well, my judo career is done. My wrestling career is over and so forth. Then a friend of mine says, hey, there's a karate school downtown. So we go downtown. I walk out and we walk into the school. And it's a Shorin-ryu school, Shobayashi Shorin-ryu. And I'm sitting there watching the classes. And this gentleman comes and says, oh, you want to do karate? I said, what? You want to do karate? And I look around and I said, yeah. Stand up, we do karate. And I said, no, I had a cast from my crotch all the way down to my ankle. He says, no problem, we kick. So I stood up, he says, just stand there. We do yoga-geri. Okay, what's a yoga-geri? He says, side kick. We do a side kick. Okay, so he shows me how to bring the leg up and I do the side kick. Now, I can't step on or anything like that because my leg's in a cast, right? So I'm just doing the stair like a kata, bring the leg up, stick the leg out in a side kick position, bring back down. Well, that evening I did probably about 20,000 of those things, it seemed like. And class is over and I leave. I have nothing to do. So the next week I come back to the class at the same time. He says, oh, you're back. Now I do Mawashigiri. I just learned what a yoku-geri. What's a Mawashigiri? Roundhouse kicker. It's a roundhouse kicker. So he shows me how to do the roundhouse kick. Now, I can't twist, I can't turn. So I just bring the leg up, the foot up at the same time this time, and throw the front-legged roundhouse kick. Again, threw about 20,000 of those things. So I got the side kick down pretty good, got the roundhouse kick down pretty good. I haven't thrown any punches yet. After a month or so goes by, my leg gets out of the cast. So I come back and I start working out the class. So we're doing the punches, working back and forth with the punches, doing the blocks, doing the things, working on forms. Then instructor sensei says, "Oh, we're going to kumite." What is kumite? I know Mawashi get it. I know you'll get it. But what is kumite? He says, Juji kumite is sparring. Now, if you understand, if you ever watch an old style 1965 class, what do they tell you about the reverse punch? Seikenzuki, Oizuki, Maki, Dakuzuki, right? It's a killing technique. It will kill somebody. Back in the old days, they believed that. You're going, "Daya, boom, boom," and you punch with these two knuckles, right? So you throw it out, you hit Nimakawara and so forth. And now he says, we're going to do Juji Kumite. What is Juji Kumite? We're going to spar. We're going to hit each other. Now, this is before equipment, way before equipment. You didn't even wrap your hands with anything. And I went, hold on. We're going to spar and we're going to hit each other. Yes. But don't you say the reverse punch can kill somebody? Yes. That's why we use kimi. Another word. What is kimi? Focus. You control your technique. So it's out and back, out and back. Okay. So we practiced that for a little while. Then he said we do one-step sparring. Ippon kumite. So boom, boom. So we do that. And now we're going to do the Juji Kumite. So we're sparring around. I'm throwing the side kick, I'm throwing ass kick, throwing back fist, reverse punch. All of a sudden, this guy, I throw the side kick, I step down, he comes charging in. And I went, whoa. And I threw a side kick, he leaned out of the way, so I whipped it around and hit him in the chest with the heel. Dropped it, which is not a nice thing to do with your instructor. And I said, well, so I stand there at attention. He said, "What'd you do?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know, sir, but I threw the side kick and you leaned out of the way. So I just brought the heel around to try to keep you away from me." He says, "Urumo washigeri. Urumo washigeri." What's a urumo washigeri? Hook a kicker. It's a hook a kicker. So if you watch my competition throughout my entire career, side kick, roundhouse kick, hook kick. Yokigeri, Mwashigeri, Urumo washigeri. Ura means reverse. So the roundhouse kick comes here. The reverse of that is the hook kick. And the back fist, Uraken, and the Richat Haito became the jab, the left hook. And it's all left side because, remember, I tore my right knee up in judo. So it did a really, really good job of holding me up. But I couldn't do anything with it because I fear it would come out of place.
And when you said, when all of us who are on this call and all of us who are martial artists, we go into that dojo, we don't know what it's going to be for us, what we're going to be. When was it, what the question I always love asking is, what got you there? Thank you for filling us in on all that, but what kept you there? Like, what day did you go, oh shit, the judo was great, the wrestling was great, but I'm gonna live here for a while and maybe indefinitely.
E in the wrestling, not an A, wrestling. it's people call it wrestling, but it's wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
You wrestle.
Do I wrestle? No, I do jujitsu.
What happened is, after I got out of the service, thinking my martial arts career was over, because my father wants to be a school teacher. So I'm going to go back to Ball State University, learn to teach physical education, and become a physical educator, because that's what my father wanted to happen. So I get back to Ball State, and I'm wrestling out there, and I'm up in the gym, and I start going through some karate movements. And a guy named Robert Robbins comes and says, "You do martial arts?" I said, "Well, yeah." He says, "What system?" I said, "Well, they do Shorin-ryu." He says, he does Isshin-ryu. And there's a little get-together they're going to do down in Indianapolis, which is about 60 miles away. So I said, "You want to go down there this weekend?" I said, "Sure." So that Saturday, I drive down with him. I meet Glenn Keeney, Robert Bowles, Parker Shelton. These are the old names from back in the 60s and the 70s. Mm-hmm. And we start sparring around. And we sparred there for, it must have been 4 or 5 hours. And I came back with a renewed vigor of training. And then Glenn Keeney says, "There's a karate tournament the end of January in Lexington, Kentucky. Would you like to go?" And I said, "Love to go." So I drive down with these guys to Lexington, which is about maybe 3-4 hours. And luckily, I win the tournament. And like you said, the rest is history. And then the wildest thing, I started winning tournaments. I started winning championships. I won the nationals 3 years in a row. But because I was good at points. I was good at touching you before you could touch me. I was good at throwing kicks because I had very light legs. I had skinny ass legs. So they're easy to maneuver around. And I was a leg wrestler, so I was a scissor man. So that worked really good too with the flexibility and so forth. But then in 1974, a guy named Glenn Keeney was my good friend that we worked out with in Indiana. And then a guy named Joe Lewis calls me up and says, Bill, we picked you to be our middleweight in a team competition. And I said, oh, that's good. Where are we going to fight? He said, well, we're going to go over to Germany, and we're going to fight the European team. I said, well, that's great. When do we go? And he said, well, we're going to go in May. But Bill, understand something. This is full contact. This is to the knockout. Well, Joe, you guys have a wonderful time. I want you to enjoy yourselves because this is fun. I can throw a punch and I can throw a kick and I can think I could kill you. I don't want to have to prove it. I don't want you to have to prove it against me. So no thanks. And old school, Joe Lewis, because he was shorter also, same system, same school in Okinawa. He kept saying, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. So I finally said, okay, I'll do it. So now, ironically enough, that same evening, seemed like the same, I don't know for sure or not, but I think it was the same evening, I get a phone call from a guy named Elvis Presley. I'm in Indiana at the time. And he says, Bill, I'm going to open up a karate school here in Memphis, and I want you to come back to Memphis and teach at the school. Think about it. Okay, I'll do it. And now understand this. My father wanted me to be a school teacher. I went to college to be a school teacher. Then I went to Memphis State University to do my graduate work. Now I moved back to Indiana, and I'm going to be a school teacher, right? So he calls me and offers me the job. I says, okay, now I have to call my parents and tell them what's going to happen. So I call my dad up. My dad, Dad, put Mom on the phone. What's wrong? What's wrong? I said, nope, nothing wrong. Just put Mom on the phone. My mother gets on the phone. She says, what's wrong? I says, nothing. You know how Dad wants me to be a school teacher? She said, yeah. I said, well, we're going to have to put that on hold for a little while because Elvis Presley just offered me a job. Mom, are you there? Mom. My dad picks up the phone and says, what'd you just tell your mother? I says, I just told her I've been offered a job working for Elvis Presley. Dad, are you there? And, and then again, we went over to Europe. We competed in Europe. And then in September 14th, 1974, we had the World Championships at Los Angeles. And I got lucky and won. So they defended 23 times.
So Sensei, I want to pick up back there in a moment, and I know that especially Hanshi and Sensei Dauphin have some real specific, that 70s run you went on. But I want to back up a little to ask about both your service and who your sensei in Okinawa was. Tell us a bit about him.
Well, my sensei in Okinawa was Eizo Shimabuku.
Uh-huh.
Joe Lewis's instructor. He just died a couple of years ago, but he was the big sensei in Okinawa. Now, here's what's funny. Nowadays, back then, there was only sensei. There wasn't Hanshi, there wasn't Shihan, there wasn't all these names. There was only sensei. Shimabuku, who was 10th dan, to all of us, was sensei. So he was Sensei Shimabuku, not Hanshi, not this. And I come back, and all these guys are calling these other instructors' names that I've never heard of before. Granted, I didn't know a lot of it Okinawan, but I remember the Japanese terminology that they used. But not Hanshi, not Shihan. It was always just sensei, which means teacher. So that's where that is. Eizo Shimabuku, which was Joe Lewis's instructor also at the time. Then when I came back to California at San Bernardino, my instructor was Mickey Janek and George Torben.
Mm-hmm. Sensei Suino?
Yeah, before we get too far away from that, so Sensei Wallace, I actually visited Shimabukuro Sensei a few times in Okinawa after he closed his dojo in town and only had the chicken farm, right?
Budokan too. Remember that the big dojo that
Yeah.
everybody used?
So I remember the first time I went down there, I'm driving all over the island trying to find his place, right? And there was a cop standing on the side of the road, and I just took a wild shot. I said, "Hey, I'm looking for this karate sensei named Shimabukuro." It turned out to be one of his best friends, right? And he just said, "Hey, drive down here. You'll see the chicken farm. Go down there." And just had a great visit with him. I just thought I'd share that with you because
He's a nice guy. When I was in Okinawa, I was at Kanina Air Base. I was in the Air Force. And Kanina Air Base, and ironically, I've never paid a dime for any kind of a martial arts lesson because when I was in the service pays for it. So when I went to Okinawa to work with Shimabuku, they paid for everything.
wow.
So, I'd work out there and train there and so forth and so on, then came back and paid for everything. But when I was in Okinawa at Kadena Air Base, there was a gravel road. I don't know I'm sure you probably flew into Kadena, right? That's where the airport is.
Yeah.
So there was a gravel road from Kadena down to Naha. And that's all. Now I guess it's a super highway now, right?
Yeah, it's paved and quite a lot of development. But still, when you get out, he's passed away now. But in those days, when you got out to his place, you're definitely out in the country.
Yeah.
So Sensei, again, historically speaking, when you look at a top Sensei of today, I mean, somebody who really knows their stuff and is excellent, what would you say that he in Okinawa in the late 60s had that you remember as being, that old classic Sensei? What is it that you got that maybe somebody doesn't offer today, or maybe the best Senseis do have today? Passion?
It's hopefully my friends will tell you, hopefully my wife tells you, I am very passionate about this. Martial arts to me, it's my way of life. When I kick, when I punch, I try to do it as perfectly as I can. Every time, not sometimes, not half the time. I'm stretching all the time. I work my flexibility all the time. I work the movement all the time. You can't see it now, but I have my little cactus right over here that when I do my Zoom classes that's my target because you can't kick people anymore. So that's my class. I can work my control, work my snap, work my speed. I was never a powerful fighter. I was trying to be quick, and in our system is in speed you develop a certain amount of power. So that's what I would try to do, is try to be quick in the movement. And back in Okinawa, that's the way they were trained. It was not lunging way out there, but it was combinations, nice and crisp technique. And anybody the old school combination, the old school teaching with the bamboo shinai. I don't know if you were there training, but they used it when they used it. You'd be over here and they'd hit your arm with the bamboo shinais, kick you, punch you in the back of the leg with a bamboo shinai, just to make you think of the Zenkutsu dachis, the kibadachis, the horse stances, and perfection is what they wanted. Ironically enough, if you look at people fighting nowadays, or if you watch people doing kata, the kibadachis, God, I mean, their crotch is almost on the floor. It's so low. Well, the kibadachi in the old school is a little bit over, shoulder width apart, because you still have to be able to move from this stupid thing. Well, that's why, the Americans now and a lot of the foreign people have taken not the purpose of the kata, but the looks of it. If your kata looks better than mine, you win, even though mine might be more effective. And one thing we were taught too, when you did a kata, your head stayed level the entire time. Didn't come up and down, up and around. So, and I think a lot of people forgot that also.
And then again, before I turn this over, I have such a fascination with people who've served the Vietnam War. You did 2 tours, if I'm not mistaken. And did you come back with a different, pardon me?
Just one tour. I was in Okinawa. I taught the air commandos going over Vietnam.
Got it. And did that change? Did you come back and go, oh, the martial arts, aside from your training, means something different because you're literally doing the most martial art of all when you're in the military?
When I worked with the guys going over to Okinawa or going over to Nam from Okinawa, it was just, I had it for 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, when are you going to teach somebody, right?
Mm.
So, you've got a sidearm, you've got your nightstick, you got your M16. So what am I going to do to teach you martial arts? So I taught him the side kick, taught him the front kick, taught him a back fist. So if nothing happens, at least you can keep the guy away from you so he can't grab your 45, he can't grab your nightstick, he can't take your M16 away from you. And back then, it was called an AR-15.
Mm-hmm. Sensei Dauphin, you want to take us into the competing heyday?
Me?
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
I reacquainted myself, Sensei Wallace, with many of your fights over the last couple of weeks when you agreed. I've watched them all like many times. Everything that is available on YouTube, I've watched many, many times. I wonder if you could talk about, you're a person who can very clearly talk about the evolution of contact martial arts and how it evolved from point fighting. Like I've seen you point fight, I've seen you contact fight, not in a ring, just on a flat surface where you're knocking people out and there's no ropes for you to bounce it off. And then I've seen you, as I said earlier, in the corner, knocking people out with a hook kick to the back of the head when you have your back. So, and you were at the UFC 1. So you're a person who uniquely can talk about the transition from a classical dojo where you're doing Juju Kumite, as you call it, all the way to UFC #1 where Gracie, like, how do you see that evolving? Why did that happen? What are your thoughts on that transition and why?
The transition, when we first started martial arts, again, there was no pads. It was just, two people got together and they sparred, right? They did kumite. And as long as we like each other, we're friends, we have control. And if you look at the tournaments back in the early 60s, they were basically Japanese systems. Isshin-ryu, Shorin-ryu, Shotokan, Goju-ryu, different systems, but they were still basically the same Japanese system. And then all of a sudden, Taekwondo came into play, Tang Soo Do came into play, and these people wanted to come to these tournaments. And they would say, hold it now, if you're going to have a tournament and you're going to allow groin kicks, with my Taekwondo people or my Tang Soo Do people, we're not going to come because we do the high kicking movements and you'll just lean back and kick us in the crotch. So we're not going to come to your tournament if you have groin kicks. So being the tournament promoter, you're just going to turn away 100 competitors that's going to pay $9 to enter your tournament? Because that's what it was back in the mid-60s. $9. Can you believe that? Before that, it was only $5. But anyway, so the promoter's going to say, oh, well, okay. So they have the meeting and they says, we're not going to allow groin kicks. Okay. So they didn't allow groin kicks. And then the point fighters started saying, well, hold it now. Because a lot of Taekwondo people throw kicking techniques to the head. And they didn't care if they threw the jump spinning back kick and took your head off. So then the rule was, well, if you throw the spinning kick, you throw the kick to the head, you must control it. If you knock the guy down, you lose a point. Or if you knock the guy out, you get disqualified or get him cut or something like that. Okay, we'll do that. So all of a sudden, the modifications started happening. Now, what are we going to call? Well, back fist is a good solid technique. Reverse punch has always been a good solid technique. Side kick, roundhouse kick, spinning back has always been a good technique. The roundhouse kick with the rear leg has always been nice. Then all of a sudden, some people start, okay, let's have tournaments that have groin kicks in it. So now you have a guy that has a good ridge hand, like a guy named Mike Stone back in the early 60s, hit you with a ridge hand, you took a nap. So, and he'd be very good at that ridge hand, but sometimes he would throw that, you'd see him throw it. You could drop down and kick him in the groin. So sometimes that was a very good point. So now you got to have, okay, now what are we going to allow? What are we not going to allow? Now, are we going to allow him to hit or we're not going to allow him to hit? If we allow him to hit, Then we got to allow the groin kicks. And so all this started to happen. And what tournament we're going to fight in today? The association that mattered. The United States Karate Association allowed groin kicks. Japanese system did not allow groin kicks. Koreans did not allow the groin kicks. Open tournaments, you could touch to the face, but you couldn't hit hard. If there was face contact, blood, disqualification. But the Koreans said, hey, who cares? If I hit you in the face, it's your fault. So all that changed a little bit too. But then come the advent, early 70s, of something called safety equipment. Now the safety equipment was very good because it allowed you to make the contact. You weren't supposed to make the contact, but it allowed you to make contact ever so slight. It was more to protect the hand and the foot than it was to protect the other person's body or the head. And then all of a sudden, that progressed into, hey, let's hit each other really hard now. Well, really think about this. We want to find out, that's what kickboxing came about. We want to find out the techniques that work, the techniques that don't work. When you're wearing a glove, a back fist is a useless technique. Why? Because the back fist, you're striking with the back two parts of these two knuckles, correct? But now I've got this glove on that's a 10-ounce padded glove. So I smack a guy with a 10-ounce padded glove, and he goes, but it doesn't do anything else. It makes his head do that, and that's about it. Now, the rich hand is null and void too, because now with the glove on, the boxing glove on, now I can't, that glove is about that thick. So I can't do this anymore. Now it's a whole glove that comes, the thumb won't even bend under there. Now the foot pads protects the top of the foot. You can't bend your toes back, so you use the front kick, you end up hitting with your toes or whatever the case may be. And the shin kick was null and void because you didn't allow that because it was dirty fighting. My parents always said kicking to the groin or, doing leg kicks was dirty fighting. They just don't understand. But anyway, so all those rules changed and they modified all the time. Come 1993, we're in Denver, Colorado. I'm with Rorion Gracie. We're talking about having the first UFC. What people don't understand, and think about this, all of you, name one round, just one round in any boxing match where there wasn't a clinch. There aren't any. What do you think the jiu-jitsu guy waits for? If you think about it, if you watch Royce, when he was competing, he used like a front kick from this to keep you away from him. Then he could drop it. The first takedown any wrestler is ever taught is a double leg takedown. You grab hook, dump him on his back, and you work up. Well, a stand-up fighter, if he's not been trained extensively, gets knocked down on his back. All he wants to do is get up. Can't get down laying on your back. So what do? You turn over on all fours, which gives your opponent your neck. And you get choked out. This is one of the things I want you to think about. Of all the times that you sparred, just point sparring, did you ever say, I quit? Did you ever tap out and said, I quit? No. You just back off and say, let me rest. You got me with a good one, or whatever the case is, right? But in the first UFC, not to create any havoc or something, but every one of those fighters that got choked out, tapped out. Now, if I'm choking you out and you can't breathe, you're panicky because you can't breathe. How did you remember to choke out? Think about it. How did you remember to choke out? Or the guy's got your arm, you got me, I choke out. But you try to you don't remember that in a heated situation. I wouldn't have. So, but it was a great, and I've told this to Rorion, I've told it to all the Gracies because they're good friends of mine. It's a great 2-hour advertisement for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It was. No, think about it. It was. Yeah. It was. Because you got Rorion, you got Royce Gracie that never threw a punch. Never threw one punch. Choked everybody out. Didn't hurt anybody. Just choked them out. threw one kick at the boxer. Why? But he threw one kick at the boxer, front kick to knock him back, and then dropped in, took him down, choked him out. He choked everybody out. So basically, you know, that's the best part. That's the best part. He didn't do anything aggressive other than choke you out. Great advertising.
So let me ask you, because we've got a number of questions that have come in and I want to get to them. And thank you for that, because that makes so much sense. When you see where the sport is now, MMA in general, the UFC in general, and you see the certain rules, the 4-ounce gloves they're wearing, you see how effective both stand-up and jiu-jitsu is, and then you think back to your time in the 60s, do you think they found a good balance? Do you think it's leaning too much one way?
The only thing that I don't like about UFC now, and I like it, I like to watch the fighting. The only thing I don't like about it is the term they use, ground and pound. You know, because that is a street fight. You got two guys down there, one guy takes another guy down, and he starts pounding on him. And they say, well, that's reality. No, reality is getting out there on the street, a concrete street or a blacktop street. Now the guy's pounding on you. And if you're both are rolling around on the street, you're both are beat up because that concrete doesn't give it all. And as a law enforcement person, you don't want to be next to a guy that's trying to get away from you. You don't want to hold him down. You don't want to take him down. You don't want to be on top of him trying to choke him out because he's just as close to your gun as you are. He's just as close to your mace as you are. Police officers want their distance. They want to be behind you so they can cuff you, so that they don't be on top of you because they got to buy their own uniforms. What happens to your knees and your elbows? It gets all scuffed up. And you're wearing that flak. You're wearing the body armor, which is 40 pounds, 40, 45, 50 pounds. Move around with 45 or 50 pounds on you. But
Okay,
great advertising.
So you think they found a pretty good balance, but it doesn't quite jive in some real life, yeah.
Great now. The fighters are really good. They're good technique. It just, you know, bringing up the physiology part. Okay, you and I spar. You hit me, that's 1. I fall down, hit my head on the floor. That's 2. You jump on top of me, go bam, 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 bam. You hit me 4 times. But it's not really 4 times because now it's 8 times because my head bounces off that floor each time. So the one shot that knocked me down ends up being 10 or 12. Now, brain cells die every time you see stars. Brain cells die every time you see stars. So now all you got to do is figure out where they die and how many of them die. And funny thing about brain cells, they don't regenerate. They stay dead. That's why you'll talk to boxers that have been doing this for a long time. They can't carry a conversation. Remember Jerry Quarry back in the 90s, a boxer, right? Jerry Quarry died of something called pugilistic dementia. He couldn't say one sentence when he died. You get hit, brain cells die. Your brain swells up. Now that doesn't have that Cushing effect with the fluid that's in the brain. It can't hold on to it. So now it's just bone against brain. Swells even more pretty soon. So that's the only thing I don't like about it. Because if you get clocked really good and that guy jumps on you, hits you 4 more times before the referee jumps in and pulls you off. That's 4 or 5 good shots that didn't need to be there. And remember, still competition. It's like, I've said this from the start, it's like 2 gladiators out there fighting. Except the loser this time doesn't die yet.
So we got a question from, Al Panakia, and he's wondering if you have any funny stories about someone trying to teach you a secret technique to improve your fighting.
It's so much. Remember, I have to fight sideways to protect my knee, right? I have a bad right knee, so it's hard to stand like a boxer. It's hard to move. Well, my boxing trainer in 1974 was a guy named Joy Hadley. People don't remember Joy because he got beat by a guy named Michael Johnson in 1972 Olympic trials. Michael Johnson beat him 1 point. But Michael Johnson couldn't go to the Olympics because he had 2 broken eardrums and a broken jaw. Guy hits like a mule. Tall, skinny, maybe weighed 170 pounds, but tall, the boop, and you took him out. Well, anyway, I'm sparring him this way, and he's having trouble hitting me. I'm, sideways because the shoulder's in the way. And he says, Bill, if you're going to box, you need to come here and stand like a boxer. So I said, okay, I'll play. So I stand like this, right? And he reaches out, pulls my forward hand down, jerks my head forward this way, and he goes, bam, drops me. Now I'm on Queer Street. I'm getting up, and I see 3 of them. I said, well, I'll do the same for the one in the middle. And I'm trying to kill him because, I'd never had that happen before. But, it's like, that's why I said, I will never, ever, ever box like this. I'll box this way. Look at Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather boxes this way, and you can't hit him in the head because the shoulder's in the way. I like to think he stole that from me, but that's what even enforced me to stay sideways. Less target.
Mark Altamari. Oh, yeah, Sensei.
Oh, go to Mark and then come back to me.
Okay, cool. From Mark Altamari, he's wondering how you feel when you see memes and the whole idea of the legendary status of Bruce Lee and of Chuck Norris. These are contemporaries of yours, guys you've worked with. We call you a legend. What do you think of when you think of those guys and their legendary status?
All of them. I mean, maybe Bruce Lee was a little different because he wanted to be a movie star. Chuck, after the competition, and he did Return of the Dragon with Bruce Lee, got into the film industry, was very, 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 very successful. I did a Force one with Chuck. We also did Legends in Walker, Texas Ranger. I did a movie with Jackie Chan. But these guys, and I have all the respect in the world for these guys, they were there before us. And Bruce Lee, when he would do something, every one of us back in the early 70s, mid 70s, or 60s, excuse me, would go, wow, that's really neat. Because he didn't do this. He fought like we fought, except faster, sneakier. And that's when he took the boxing techniques, a lot of the boxing techniques, and put it in with the kicking techniques. And it looked absolutely superb. Chuck did the same thing, except he had a fantastic spinning back kick, and he would put that in his films. Matter of fact, he hit me with it. So, but we never, I don't believe any of us ever intended to be legends. I never intended to be anything other than a competitor and enjoy what I was doing. So my father died in 1996, and I think he still wanted me to become a school teacher. But what's really great, and I look at this, I still get emails, and I still get people writing me. I remember you at my school back in 1967. I remember you. I taught at Memphis State University from 1972 to 1980, and they write and said, "Wow, of all the classes, I remember yours the best, and I did this, and you taught us how to do this, and you taught us this." And you go, that's the best feeling in the world. If somebody can remember you and help you out, especially if you teach them something and they can use it forever. And I'm not a legend. I just got lucky at doing what I do. At the right place at the right time.
A bunch of heads shaking right now.
Yeah.
Sensei Dofak, you had a question?
Yeah, the luck part of it. Sorry, since Wells.
Quick story about Elvis Presley. I met Elvis Presley in Memphis, Tennessee, but before that, he saw me because I was at a tournament in Dallas, Texas, called the U.S. Championships. I just beat a guy named Skipper Mullins.
Oh, yeah.
It was between he and I at the time who was the best kicker in the United States. And I got lucky. I hit him with a couple of my kicks and he didn't hit me. But anyway, so when I come back, I win the tournament. We'll come back celebrating. I'm working at a Congress school in Memphis, Tennessee, and in walks Elvis Presley with his little entourage with the Memphis Mafia. And he wanted to meet me because nobody knew it, but he was at the tournament in Dallas. And he liked the way I fought. Again, at the right place at the right time.
Well, Sensei Wallace, what I say about that right place at the right time is I always say chance favors the prepared. So, so you call it luck, but you did everything to capitalize on the opportunity when it came walking through the door. And opportunity wouldn't have walked through the door had you not won that championship and done all that work to get there.
Oh, exactly.
That's my humble opinion.
Well, we're all given choices. And luckily for me, knock on wood, that up to this point, most of my choices have been really good for me.
That's clear in your success. I wondered, this could be the shortest answer, Sensei Wallace, in the history of this. I wonder if I mentioned a name, Sensei Benny Allen, if you ever had any dealings with him. He's a Canadian pioneer in martial arts. If you ever knew him.
I remember the name. Benny, yeah.
Okay. So that was one of Sensei Legacy's teachers, and I always like to ask that name because we're always looking for history on him, if people knew things about him.
Most of my people that I knew were people that I competed with, because back then,
right.
we all were friends together. We didn't, again, sorry about this, but we didn't care about the history. We just let's fight.
Right.
Let's compete.
Right. So on that note, though, there's two names that stand out for me for, pioneers that just, to me, you had lots of dealings with. One, you had you had contact fights with both of them. One they called a draw, but I don't know, when you look at the scorecards, for me, two people saying it's even and one person saying you won means that you won. But the two names I would like to mention to you and just hear your thoughts on would be obviously Joe Louis, and number two would be Blinky Rodriguez. I'd love to hear about what you think about those two names and your.
Blinky first, because we fought in 1977. And I'll be the first to admit it. He threw a left hook at me from the floor. I saw it coming. I said, there's no way that's going to get there. So I'm going to block it. Now, if you see where the hand is, I say, I've got that blocked. Well, I didn't. And he hit me with that left hook, and all I saw was little stars floating all over the place. So I backed up into the ropes, and he started hitting, and I don't know what happened, but they broke us up, and I won the fight. But he hit me. That's the hardest. Like I told you about Joy Hadley hit me, but Benny or Blinky was the hardest that I'd ever been hit. I said, I still don't understand. My head stayed on my shoulders. And Joe, we did an exhibition match. I understand. In 1990, he was 47 and I was 45 and a half. The state of Nevada will not issue a boxing license over the age of 45. That's the movie Rocky Balboa. Remember, he tried to get the boxing license to fight. Well, okay. So they wouldn't give us a boxing license. So that's why it became an exhibition match with Joe and I. Now, understand too, the weights. Joe weighed 199. I weighed 166. So we said, okay, Joe, what we're going to do is we're going to go out there. We're going to make this fancy. We're going to make this really, really fun. Now, most exhibitions are how long? 3 rounds? Well, ours was 7. In 7 rounds, it ceases to be fun after about the 3rd or 4th round. Right? Because when you start getting a little tired, especially in Lake Tahoe, you start getting hit a little bit and you say, God, that hurt. And so we had an absolute blast, but we both had black eyes at the end of it. The funny thing is, after the fight was over, after the exhibition was over, the Nevada State Athletic Commission comes into our dressing room, starts yelling and screaming, what the hell you think you guys doing? That was no exhibition. You guys had a fight. You guys will never fight in this state again. What's wrong with you? He said, that was no exhibition. You guys hit each other. That's the way we spar. And he got really mad at that. But the funniest thing about the whole that 7-round exhibition, I think it was the 5th or 6th round. We're sparring, and Joe comes charging in, and I throw a hook kick. One of the best hook kicks I've ever thrown in my life. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've killed him. I've killed my friend Joe Louis. He backs up and goes, ow. Shit. And, you know, but that was, so, you know, when people say, well, this punch will kill you or this kick will knock you out, you don't know. All you can do is throw the technique. Depends on the other guy.
Sensei, I want to ask you a couple. I'm going to combine two questions that have come in. One from Sensei Conroy Copeland, who was one of our guests on this, and you might have seen him. He said, Sensei Wallace, thank you for chatting with us. Who is your toughest fight? And have you ever been knocked out? And I'm going to add John Ryan's question. What was your most interesting fight? Toughest fight, been knocked out, most interesting fight.
Okay, number one, I've never been knocked out, ever. That's, you know, been knocked down once. Got knocked down once in a fight that I had in Oklahoma City. It was like a flash knockdown. Threw a punch and I evidently ran into it. Went down, got right back up. He didn't even get to the count of one. But that's the only time I've ever been knocked down. Never been knocked out. In every fight that I had, because I was well known, because I had a certain amount of fame, I didn't get a Bum of the Month club. So all of my fights were ranked fighters. So they all had the ability, they all had the chance to knock me out. So I had to train for all of them. And if you've ever watched my fight, I try not to get hit. I don't want to get hit. I want to keep the distance. So I get to hit you and you don't get to hit me back. That's my game. So I stayed in very good shape because of my wrestling background. So every fighter that I fought was my toughest fight because I had to train for that particular fight. You can't say, well, I'm going to forget this guy and fight the next guy. Well, this guy's got a good chance of clocking you then. And the most interesting fight that I had was, I told you guys about it. I fought in Germany. I fought in Paris, France, 1976. And I'm there. I'm the last match. I'm the last one because notoriety or whatever it is. I'm fighting a German national champion called Dieter Hurdle. Nice kid. But he's about this wide at the shoulders, about this wide at the hips, and stood, I would say, a head taller than me. He walks into the ring. I looked at him. I said, he's not a middleweight. They said, yes, he is. I said, he can't be a middleweight. Look at him. He said, he's a middleweight. I went, wow. So we bow in, take a stance, we move around. I throw the obligatory couple of side kicks, couple of roundhouse kicks, all kinds of, and I noticed when he moves, he'd do this and leave his hands here. Basically, if you watch the European boxers, they all stand this way. Most of them used to. And so what happened is I faked the back fist or the jab. He went like this, and I threw a side kick. I've never hit anybody so hard with a side kick in my life. Thought I killed him. I hit him so hard, his head hit his knees. And he's down screaming, "Ah!" One. Now, understand, I'm the main event. This is 40 seconds into the fight. 40 seconds into the fight. The referee's going, 1, 2. Added to 100, he wasn't going to get up. But anyway, they finally threw the towel in. But that's the most interesting one. I went, wow. And that, yeah, my 40-second knockout, my 40 seconds of fame in Paris. And you get the whistles and all that other stuff because it didn't last 9 rounds like it was supposed to.
So talking about being 45 for that one fight with Joe Louis, and a couple of questions that have come in, and you talk about stretching every day, including back then, but we've got a couple of questions from Mario, from Michael Sturgios. What kind of training do you do to stay fit, and also what kind of training do you do to specifically take care of that knee, given that you've got that MCL issue throughout your life?
Well, I had the MCL ligament since 1966. I tore it up. In 2000, I think it was 2002, 2003, 2004. It was so bad it was 12 degrees off center. It was like that. So I had to have it replaced. Mm-hmm. And it works perfectly now. But because I never did anything with it, never kicked with it, never worked it and so forth, now it still does a great job of holding me up, just doesn't hurt anymore. Mm-hmm. And being 45, again, with my wrestling background, I work the strengthening exercises, the endurance exercise. I try to ride a bicycle as much as I can with the knees and the hips. I can't run anymore because it's bad on the hips and the knee. But I try to maintain my conditioning. I weigh the same now that I weighed when I retired. Been 40 years, been 40 years and I haven't gained a pound. So that I feel good about. And luckily for me, my wife gets mad at me, but I have a very fast metabolism. So I can eat a quart of ice cream right now and tomorrow not gain a pound.
Shifting gears a little, a question from Ted Smith. Rick Rufus versus Chang Pek Keatsengrit is said to be the fight that changed North American kickboxing. What are your thoughts? And has North American kickboxing caught up with Muay Thai and Savate outside of North America?
Well, number one, what I understood at the time, there were not supposed to be leg kicks at that time. Now, I don't understand why, because guys Muay Thai, and Rick Rufus was not at the time. And they touched gloves and went at it. Rick Rufus runs across the ring, hits this guy with the right hand or left hand. Broke his jaw. And the guy makes it through the round. They go in the corner, puts all this, Muay Thai stuff all over the guy and water all over the place. So they got to clean it all up before he gets to come back in the ring. So rather than that 1 minute rest, he probably had 3 or 4 minutes. And the guy comes out there, and for the next 6 rounds, there was not a square inch of Rick Rufus's body from his neck down that wasn't a black and blue bruise. I mean, he hit him with his legs, with his shins, with his elbows. I mean, he just beat Rick to a pulp. And that's where we understood, hey, leg kicks are pretty good. I don't like them because to me it's fun. Sparring, the fighting part was fun. But these guys, it's a way of life for them. And the movements are very, very successful. We hit with the top of our foot, with the ball of our foot, with our heel. They hit with the shin. And the shin becomes very, very hard. I don't know about if they beat banana trees or not, because I've never, but I know the guys can throw really hard kicks. And those shins are real hard. So my respect is out the door for these guys. They're fantastic. And to be able to do that to each other all this time. Rick Rufus, again, was a fantastic fighter, great fighter, probably one of the best. I would actually say one of the best. The trouble is, if you're going to find a guy that's very good at what he does, and you think, well, I can do that just as good as he does, I'll just get out of the way of it. It's not true. Because they come at you from all these different angles. He's waiting for techniques above the waist. This guy's beating Rick's legs to pieces. Rick Rufus had to be carried from the ring.
So that actually leads to very nicely to a question from Justin Shea, one of our black belts at Legacy Shore and Rue. As someone with the depth of knowledge in kinesiology, what type of targets are you going to be choosing in a street level conflict? Are you using that understanding of the body, even what you were just talking about with the shins? Like, are you thinking about that, or is it just what's open? Where are you going with that?
My favorite kick is the side kick. My favorite hand technique is a left hook. But my technique that I used to set up all kinds of stuff was a back fist or a jab. And in a street fight situation, if I throw something to your head, what happens? Your hands come up. Now my side kick, because I've got a pair of shoes on now, I can throw it to your ribs, I can throw it to your hip, or I can throw it to your knee. And depends on, what I'm wearing. And what people don't understand is when you are sparring, my sparring techniques are the same techniques. If you look at the YouTube, my sparring techniques are the same self-defense techniques that I would use. I don't want you to get close to me. If I don't know you, you're not going to get any closer to me than 3 or 4 or 5 feet. And I'm going to turn sideways to you. So now all of a sudden, you don't see all the targets that you used to see. Besides, I've taken my weapons and put them close to you. So, it's how you work with it. My, even that, remember the kid I got to school, they got in a fight with in high school? I turned sideways to him. Now, my wrestling background was here, because you'd shoot for the double or shoot for the single leg or whatever it be, right? But all of a sudden, when I'm fighting Don, I turned sideways. I don't know why. I have no idea why I did this. But when he threw the punch, I went here. And that was just a natural shot. So it's become natural all these 80 years.
Mm-hmm. Sensei Suino, do you have any thoughts on that? Because you've done more of a bladed fighting style with us, but at the same time, you've got your more forward-facing style with your grappling arts.
Well, in grappling arts and judo, you're holding on to folks. And so, they can't, you're trying to keep them from turning. And, there's no striking tool. So it's quite different. I've had fairly limited experiences with karate, including in some of the legacy dojos. But it's also true in the shooting arts that a lot of times people have a natural tendency to blade themselves until they're trained by somebody who understands body armor, right? And then they have to be retrained, which is scary if you're used to blading, right? But they have to be retrained to face the target directly because that's what the body armor protects, right? It's interesting how these things kind of echo through the different arts, whether it's grappling, punching, shooting sports. There's similar principles expressed in slightly different ways.
Right on. Sensei Wallace, we still got a bit of time to go, but I've been moving this segment of our interviews a little earlier. It's my 10 questions for every guest.
Okay.
You can take as much time or answer as quickly as you like, but we're going to go through these 10 that I ask everybody. You've touched on this a little. What's the most effective move in your martial arts arsenal?
For my most effective, a choice between a left hook and a side kick. 13 of my knockouts in kickboxing was with a side kick. Hard to fight when you can't breathe.
Who's the most influential martial artist in your life?
Joe Louis. Joe Louis and Glenn Keeney.
Who's the most influential martial artist of all time, living or dead, and why?
I would think it'd be Bruce Lee. He made it famous.
What excites you most about your next 5 years in the martial arts?
I get to work out. I get to train. I get to try to make it right,
We're all smiling because we all feel the same. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get there?
Have a good time. Welcome.
If everyone in the world could get the greatest benefit you've gotten from martial artists, what would it be? What would you give everybody?
Have a good time. Enjoy
life. So again, you've kind of mentioned this, but this one's interesting given that you've gotten to work with so many of these people. Who's your favorite TV and film martial artist?
Oh, Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's genuinely a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person. He's probably the nicest guy you'll ever meet. Never heard him say anything bad about anybody, ever.
And this is a pivot away from those questions, but I am very interested, like Sensei Dauphin said, in the film side. I work as an actor, and Jackie Chan, Mickey Rourke. How'd you find their work with their hands and their feet?
Well, Mickey was okay. We did a movie called A Prayer for the Dying, and we sparred a little bit, just boxing, because he wasn't a martial artist, but didn't do martial arts. He was a boxer primarily, and I enjoyed working out with him. Jackie Chan, we did a movie called The Protector together. And I don't want this to sound bad at all, but we were sparring. He said, "Can we spar?" And I said, "Yeah, we'll spar." And we'll move around, we're sparring nice and easy. And I made him easy. We're just going nice and easy. And he says to me, he says, "Bill, I don't think I could beat you, but I think I could take Benny." Speaking of Benny Urquidez. And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I didn't have any trouble hitting Benny." And I says, "Nobody has any trouble hitting Benny. It's just that you have to worry about, you're going to throw a punch and you're going to throw a kick. And when you pull it back, he's going to be in the end of it. He's going to look at you and say, 'My turn.' And trust me, you don't want it to be his turn."
So again, this question takes on a different tone with you having fought some of these people. So I'm going to shift it a little. What well-known martial artist do you wish you could fight that you didn't? that you didn't get a chance to?
Mike Stone. I would have loved. I didn't even get to train with him. Sparred just about everybody that's ever been in the top 10, all of them. But Mike Stone and a gentleman named Frank Smith, Shotokan player back in the 60s, late 60s. I was supposed to be a fantastic Shotokan player. I would love to spar with him.
And then the last two questions for this segment: what's your greatest achievement and your greatest regret?
My greatest achievement, I would say that I won the world championship, never lost. And I'm happy with my wife, and I'm having a good time. And my greatest regret is I'm a shitty father. You know, a lot of times back in the early days, we have to go to tournaments, we have to make appearances, and we have to do movies, we have to do this. And I was gone a lot as my kids were growing up. So, you know, that's the thing that I'm sad about.
Well, thanks for that. And have you gotten a chance to amend any of that?
We're working on it. Yeah, my daughter, just found out my daughter, her husband is a physical therapist. They just moved to Tallahassee. He's got a job. They're working in Tallahassee. So it's only 6 hours away. So, and I talk to my son every day. So that's good. We play, I don't know if you know that, but we play a game. He'll give me the name of a song, and I have to tell him who sang it.
Right on.
Basically 60s, you know, 60s. So we play that game every day, a couple times a day. So it's still fun.
Right on. I hope that goes well for you. I have a question about that, about the physio idea. Is it true that you ended up with a potentially career-ending injury, and then you got some acupuncture through Elvis's guy that worked well? Is that a real thing?
1973, I'm in a point tournament in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm fighting a guy named Larry Reinhardt, who was a starting quarterback for the Tennessee or University of Tennessee, starting linebacker, big guy, right? I kick him in the face. I get my first point. We're moving around, and he just lays off and slams my left leg, just kicks it right in the back of the calf. I'm standing there. I go, ow. And about 3 seconds later, I can't feel anything. I can't feel a thing. I can't even move my toes. Well, I still won the fight, and I think I drove home or flew home, and for the next 3 months, I can't even walk. I can't even walk. And I'm going, whoa, guess what? And you know what a hematoma is? Hematoma is like a blood clot in a muscle. Anyway, so I'm laying there. I'm sitting there. I get this phone call from Red West. Red says, Bill, how are you doing? I said, well, I'm fine. Red, how are you doing? He says, come over here to Graceland. We have a present for you. Huh? Come over to Graceland. We have a present for you. Okay. So I drive over to Graceland. I drive over to Graceland. Festus lets me through the gate. I go up to the house, walk in. Elvis is leaning over the balcony and says, come on up, Bill. So I come up the stairs and come on in the room. I come in his bedroom, which is the gaudiest place you've ever seen in your entire life. Red velvet, all kind of neat because it's Elvis, right? He said, and the doctor's there, a guy's there, and he says, hi, I'm Dr. I can't remember his name. He says, take your pants off. I said, what? He says, take your pants off. And Elvis just starts laughing. What for? He says, I want to look at your leg. I said, oh. So I take my pants off, sit down on the bed. Huh? Sit down on the bed. I sit down on the bed, one of those things. And he feels all up and down my left leg. Puts 18 marks from my hip all the way down to my ankle. Now, I hate needles. My wife will tell you I hate needles. Scared to death of needles. We stuck 18 shots of something called xylocaine in my left leg. And now I can't even walk up to this point. I can walk, but it's a hobble. 15 minutes later, my leg was as good as new. what it did was basically dissolve the hematoma. Now, that's okay. That's fun. That's a great part. I'm figuring we're going to go home. I'm going to leave, go downstairs, get in my car and go home. He says, might as well come in and have some dinner with us. Lisa Marie was there. She's visiting. The doctor stayed there, and the Memphis guys there, Red West, those guys. So we went downstairs to his big old long table and had dinner. And I can't, dumb me, I can't even remember what we had. But it was there. I'm having dinner with Elvis Presley.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Sensei?
I guess Sensei Wallace, on that, I've read lots of things about Elvis, you know, with Sensei Parker, and then I read this story once about Sensei Parker didn't feel comfortable grading him at the time and sent him to a military person named Hank Smolansky, and that's who Elvis got his black belt from. I don't know if any of that's true, and I don't know if you can corroborate that.
We're talking about Germany.
I'm sorry, Sensei?
Talking about Germany, right? When Elvis was in the service?
Yes. And
Yeah.
I guess my question is, can you corroborate any of that? And my follow-up question would be,
Yeah.
what was Elvis good at as a martial artist? What did you think he was good at as a martial artist?
He loved the Kempo system. He loved Ed Parker's system. He was more interested in the self-defense aspect of it than he was in the sparring aspect of it. Why? Because number one, he can't afford to get hit. He couldn't afford to get hit in the ribs or get hit in the face just in case something happens. But he did like the self-defense. He liked to beat his guys up, his Memphis guys up. Red West, Sonny West, Jerry Schilling, Charlie Hodge, all those guys. He'd beat them up in demonstrations. But, you know, what you're thinking about with the promotion, every time Elvis Presley went on stage and he went through a stance and he went through a kick or went through some self-defense movements, every mother that had a kid says, my kid's going to do that. And if he could, if I was around when promoting him, I would have given him a 35th degree black belt. Because you can't get any better advertising for the martial arts than what he did.
And then I guess a follow-up, I know I know you have a different history with John Belushi, but you trained him and you're with John Belushi. What are your thoughts on him as a person, and what did you enjoy about him?
Well, I met John at a party out in California in 1979. Well, matter of fact, it was 1980. It was a Christmas party, you might say. And I was still fighting at the time, so it was 1979. And he looks at me and he says, "You're that karate guy, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Wow." And he shakes my hand. We meet, talk back and forth. And we're talking, spent about 10, 15 minutes there. And he says, "What are you doing this summer?" I says, "I have no plans," because I was living in Memphis at the time. "Yeah, I have no plans." And he says, "We're going to go on tour in June. And would you like to go with us?" I said, "Well, I have a competition. I have to defend my title the middle of June. I might be interested after that." He says, "Okay, what's your telephone number?" So I gave him my telephone number, thinking I'm not ever going to hear from him again. He's just, hey, I got Wallace's, whatever it is. So a week before my June 15th fight with Robert Biggs, he calls and says, "I want to wish you good luck with your fight. There'll be a ticket waiting for you at the Indianapolis airport to fly up Chicago Sunday morning." Okay. I luckily won the fight and went up to and worked with John from 1980 to 1982 when he died. And we had a good time together. My wife, Jane, we had several dinners together at the house. He was a good guy.
Thanks for sharing that, Sensei. So there's a couple of Canadian names I wouldn't mind mentioning to you that you know them both very well. I actually, when I was in Ottawa, it might've been Joe Corley who said it, that Wally Slokey helped you learn how to kick. What are your thoughts on Sensei Slokey and his kicking ability and your history with him?
Well, Wally is great, phenomenal kicker, fantastic. We were I think it was 1968 at the USK Grand Nationals in Kansas City, Missouri, and we become friends because we're about the same size and same, kind of happy-go-lucky attitude, sort of forth. And we're here, and all of a sudden he just drops into the splits. Now I was a good kicker, but I couldn't come close to doing the splits. And I said, "How do you do that?" And he showed me a couple of ways of how he does the splits, and he would stand in a doorway and just stick his foot up and be be like this. And I went, "Wow, I want to be able to do that." So he started me in the flexibility aspect of it. I could kick fast, but I didn't have the flexibility like Wally had it. But so he got that spark going.
The other name I want to mention to you is somebody who's a personal hero of mine. What are your thoughts on Jean-Yves Thériault and his kickboxing career and his martial arts abilities?
Jean-Yves was probably one of the best technicians I've ever seen fight in my life. Absolutely nice guy, great guy, and just phenomenal athlete. There's pictures of him kicking, there's pictures of him punching, and I look at it and I said, "Shit, perfect technique, great movement." And I respect him from the bottom of my heart. A couple of times we were supposed to fight, and something happened, and we did. I'm glad we didn't. And I can say I could have. No.
Sense of Legacy, I've seen you smiling a lot, and I just wondered if you have any thoughts, or is anything standing out for you, Sense of Legacy, on what Sensei Wallace is saying, or anything that you want to share with Sensei Wallace? Or
no, I just really enjoy the era that he is from, because a lot of that, like he said, we had no equipment, and that. And I enjoy hearing the time just before me, right? And then hearing how the champion did all his work to get the titles.
It's like, but we had fun. Nobody nobody got paid. Nobody made any money. We just did the tournaments, and all of a sudden, and we loved it because Black Belt Magazine would put our names in the magazine. They'd have a tournament, and our names would be in the magazine if we won, if we got second or third, or whatever the case is. Nowadays, the magazines don't have anybody's name in it. They don't have any tournaments in it. So why compete? Because nobody knows who I'm going to win. And if I win this tournament, there's another guy who wins the same tournament next week and causes the Worldwide Open Championship of the South Side of Chicago. Even when we were fighting, there were a couple slow ones like that. There was the USK Grand Nationals. There's the US Championships in Dallas, Texas. There's the International Championships. There's the NKL World Championships that they have, and then they have the WUCO Championships over in Europe. And you go, okay, the only guy that I've ever sparred with that was from that seminar was Dominic Valera. And fantastic technician, great person, and a great fighter. But, we all fight each other every time. They're just a different name for the tournament. I fought Jeff Smith probably 9 or 10 times. Fought Howard Jackson probably 5 times. And Joe and I we fought 4 times. Joe and I fought 4 times. And now, understand, back then, it was a lightweight winner against the heavyweight winner for the Grand Championship. Yeah. And Joe outweighed me probably 50 pounds. But just maybe, I'm a little quicker than he is. And playing our game like we played it, if I could touch him before he touches me, I don't care how hard he hits me. I get the point. So that was the fun part of it, not who was the Billy Bad Butt. But we had a blast. It was fun.
Our last question from the people watching, from Neil Prime. Do you prefer soft chocolate ice cream from Frostburg, Maryland, or maple donuts from Canada?
Can I have both? If you ever see the picture, Neil was with me. This was 2 years ago in Frostburg, Maryland. He came down to work out. There was now trust me when I tell you this. The ice cream was this time. And I didn't spill one drop of it, not one drop of it. But it would have been fine. It would have been nice to have that ice cream and then wash it down with some maple bars. Give me some solid.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Neil was in Ottawa, was he not? He was in Ottawa with you, was he not?
My corner. He was in my corner.
Yeah.
Helped me against
Yeah.
Wall.
I remember him being a very nice person when he introduced himself. Super nice man.
Great guy, fun guy. He's from St. Catharines. Superb, my friend.
So we like to wind this up going around the horn, but I got two last questions for you, unless anyone else does. One is, you know, in that 70s heyday, you know, obviously Bruce Lee really wanted to get into that Hollywood life. Chuck Norris seemed to be able to keep the martial arts really pure while tasting of it. Did you ever dig into that whole Hollywood thing and get off on the fact that you had some entree there and some name to go play around and dance with the scene?
I did the movie with Chuck. It was fun, basically because it was Chuck. And I moved out there because of a girl a long time ago. And back in 80, I moved out there. That's why I started working with John and everything. But, you know, my ego doesn't allow me to do that because, you know, think about this. You have 20 people to go read for a part. They all have the same abilities. They all can do the part. It's just that they look differently.
Mm-hmm.
And because some guy looks a little different than this guy, and this guy looks differently than that way, facial features or body type or whatever the case, this guy gets the job. Only because of he has the look that I want. You know, and you go, wow. You know, one time I read for a part, and they said they need a martial artist. So I said, fine. So I took out the uniform, I took my judo uniform, did all kinds of techniques, stretched out, did some kicks, did some throws, did all the stuff. The guy says, thank you very much. You're exactly what I want. We'll call you. 5 days go by and I didn't get the call. I called my agent up. They said, what happened? They said, they picked a guy that had the look that they wanted. Didn't know anything about martial arts. He just had the look that they wanted. I said, take my name off the list.
Right.
I don't need that.
So that leads to my second question, is that in those sorts of decisions, you've always seemed to have kept your head on relatively straight. And as you're describing dates, things people hit you with, things you hit people with, you've maintained a clarity of thinking that not a lot of people who are 74, let alone fighters, are able to maintain. Is that something you train? Is that something you work on? Are you just lucky? Where does that come from?
Pain hurts. And when I'm fighting, if you look at my stance, I'm sideways. So it's also kind of difficult to hit me because there's nothing straight in except the head. And if you throw a reverse punch at my head, I just bring the shoulder up, and now that shoulder, see how it protects the face? That's all I do. Now you got to come around with it, which takes a longer period of time so I can see it. So I don't want to get hit. I'll spar with little kids, and they'll move in on me, and I'll back up just to keep that distance, because that's the practice for me, to keep the distance. I don't want to get hit at all. I want to go through. That's why I would defend my title 5 times a year. You know, I remember I defended it 23 times in 6 years. Most people defend it maybe, okay, if it's 6 years, they defended it 5 times. But I defended it 23 times. Why? Because I didn't get hit, and I stayed in good shape. So because I stayed in good shape, I was not afraid to, okay, we'll do the fight. We'll do this. We'll do that. I fought March. I fought in May. I fought again in that June. And that's 1978. And because I was in good, so my agent at the time says, you want to fight? Yeah, I feel good. I'm feeling good shape, so let's keep going. Because I didn't have to heal, you might say.
Right on. Well, Sensei, I'm really sad to say that we're gently going to start winding this down. We're going to go around, we can keep chatting, but I just want to say, you know, as a guy who's 45, the age at which you fought Joe Louis, I'm always looking to the masters on this call for things I can look at. And a lot of it is physical. I want to take those notes and try them the next time I'm sparring. But the one thing that never ceases to amaze me is you just keep saying how lucky you are. I've never seen somebody that lucky 23 fights in a row. But the humility that you and all of our masters seem to bring to this astounds me. And I just want to say thank you for that, because as I move forward and I realize how the men and women I'm looking up to, they really do give it away. They give away all the stuff that we call greatness to other things. And whether that's accurate or not, because we'd all argue it isn't with you, it's really nice to hear. And I want to thank you for that.
You know, I went out there and fought, but you know, luckily in all my fights, I was never injured before I fought or during the fight. I was always in good physical condition, and I always worked speed. I never worked power, so I was always had the ability to get out of the way. If somebody's coming at me hard, I can back up as fast as you can run at me. And that's what a lot of times when you're in a ringed area that you don't do. You bounce off the ropes or whatever. I'm 165 pounds. I'm in a 14-foot square. You can't catch me. So that's the good part about it, because I use that. You know, that's why you know, when Roberto Duran fought Sugar Ray Leonard, he wanted a little bitty ring.
Mm-hmm.
Leonard wanted the big ring so he could dance. I fought Ray McCallum, who was a very, very good kicker, good fighter. In 1980 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, we fought in a 13-foot ring, and we're both kickers. Now, if you look at a 13-foot ring, we take one step and we're shaking hands.
Well, before I pass this to Sensei Suino, I just want to, you know, do what I like to do every once in a while and shout out to the people watching. If you're watching, the gentleman just said he never fought injured, even though he had an actual leg he couldn't throw a kick with. That's what a champion says, is I wasn't injured, even though they were down a full tool. So again, I take a lot from that. And if anybody's watching and making excuses for why they can't hit the dojo tomorrow, go use whatever's working and train it tomorrow. Sensei Suino?
Yeah, Sensei, I just want to get a last little bit of detail about training. You know, you're 74, you're in great shape. You've talked about stretching. You've talked about the fact you've not gotten injured in fights. What's a week like? What's a week like for you? Stretching, weightlifting. You know, you say don't run anymore. You know, what's a week of working out like for you?
What I do, let's say a normal 5-day week, Monday through Friday. Monday, every day I stretch just a little bit, not hard, but every day I stretch just a little bit, just for the muscle memory of the loosening of relaxed movement. Because like, remember what I said, a relaxed muscle is a quicker muscle. And remember this, a muscle always pulls, it never pushes. So when a muscle contracts, that's where the strength is. So if I teach these muscles to relax, that contraction is going to be quicker, because now it doesn't have to relax, then contract rapidly. So I want to teach that to relax. A relaxed muscle is a quicker muscle, like I said. It's also less prone for injury. If you watch people that get drunk, they get in a car wreck, they never get injured. It's the other guy that sees it coming and he gets hurt real bad. And then my normal week is I work out with light weights, high repetition, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Light weights, I work curls, tricep extensions, push-ups, tummy work. And just lightweight, high repetitions, 3 to 5 sets, 10, 12 reps a set, just to maintain. Like you said, I'm 74 years old. I'm not going to get any faster. I'm not going to get any stronger. But maybe at my age, I can at least maintain. My endurance comes from, I'll go to the boxing gym, work the bag, work combinations, work movements, muscle memory again. And then I like to ride a bicycle because I don't want my legs to get big and strong. I want them to stay strong, but not get bulky, because I still need the flexibility. I still need to do the kicking. And I have a blast.
Sensei Dauphin?
Is this my final thoughts, Sean? Is that what you're looking for?
Unless you want to crack it open a little more, but yeah.
No, I mean, every time we do this, I have takeaways. I have things that rattle around in my mind for weeks and months. With Sensei Legacy, even the last call, Sensei Copeland, just different things that have been said, Sensei Tarian. You know, a thing that I align with, or a couple things I want to say about Sensei Wallace is super proud that we're both Shorin-ryu guys, right? And Sensei Legacy is a Shorin-ryu guy. I'm super proud about that. That makes me feel really good. I I'm really happy that Sensei Wallace and I share the fact that we're Sagittarians.
What system of Shorin-ryu are you? There's a system.
I'd say I would want Sensei Legacy. I'd say it's closer to Matsubayashi, but I would want Sensei Legacy to respond to that.
I would say that's correct, yes. Yeah, but some of the white crane we do is from the Seito Ryu system,
Okay, mine is Shobayashi.
Shobayashi, Kobayashi, Izu and
Yeah.
Shimabukuro and the brothers, right?
Ironically enough, is Tatsuo Shimabuku. Is
That's
Ace,
who, yeah, that's right. Yes,
who started Ishinra.
yeah.
So we have that Shorin-ryu connection.
I love
The other
Shorin.
thing, the other connection that we have is my birthday is December 3rd and yours is December 1st. And
Yeah.
so I'm proud that we're both Sagittarians.
Good.
So that makes me feel good. I'm just trying to lean on your greatness a little bit, Sensei, right? And hope that a little of it, just a little of it rubs off on me. But, you know, a couple of other thoughts, final thoughts is I really think there's some people like good friends of mine in this area and working with Sensei Legacy and maybe Sensei Suino, we really should get some seminars for you up here in Canada, get you up here, get you into Michigan, into Sensei Suino's area. I think it would be awesome. I would be so excited to be able to do something like that. And the thing I'm going to be thinking about most is just what you said about, I still haven't thrown the perfect technique and I'm still about getting in there and trying to, that's something I really relate to. I love getting in the dojo and just training. It's just a place to be. And I'm going to be thinking about that. You're saying that at 74, that you're still in there. You still love working out. You still love doing it. I'm going to be thinking about that a lot in these next couple of weeks. And I always say it. I'm so grateful that you come on and do this. I'm so grateful that Sensei Legacy is here. I'm so grateful that Sensei Suino's here. I'm so grateful to have Sensei Sean Benson on the call. And I'm so grateful for all the people who are signing in and finding value. I hope we're leaving a digital footprint that's going to last forever when none of us are here. I hope people are logging into this and seeing this and learning something from it that's keeping martial arts great.
It's something that you can talk about forever. And it's something you can do forever. Not hard, not strong, not fast, but you can at least do it. If you want some of these old timers, the old senseis, you know, their stances, their Senkutu Dachi, their Kiba-dachi, their cats, there's nothing phenomenal, but they know why. Not how maybe, but they know why it happens. And that's the great part. There's always a reason for something.
Sensei Legacy, anything you want to say on our way out?
Yes, I appreciate Sensei Wallace. I watch you like a hero, like a fighter all the time, and we never really knew each other. I met you at the Hall of Fame there. We had a few words. Yes, thank you very much for that. And I'm just glad to get to know you or of you more than just seeing you in a fight. And now that I actually do know you, I feel more accomplished a little bit about, you know, coming up to you and talking to you.
Ice cream, Maple bars, and hamburgers, and we'll be fine.
Okay. That's great.
Greece is wonderful. You know.
And you are a legend.
Thank you, sir. You know,
never in your own home.
Yeah.
no. Yes, dear. That's the best things a husband can ever tell his wife. Yes, dear.
Yeah, we all do.
So before I give the last word to, pardon me, Sensei, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Got a mean roundhouse kick. I'm looking for her.
I'm just going to say a couple things before I give you the last word, Sensei. So to everybody watching, next week we have Sensei Tarian back as a return guest. If you watched the first time, if you didn't, go back and watch it. There was just too much to talk about. We barely scratched the surface. And then a week after, we have Sensei Cesar Burkowski. So we're super excited about those. Log on, sign up. We're sort of filling back up again. It seems like people got a little break and they missed this. So that's That's brilliant. And the last thing I want to do is say thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Sensei Wallace. And I want to give you the last word, but I want to remind you also to talk about Wallace's Wednesdays.
Oh, yeah. We did this 6 weeks ago. We started at Wallace's Wednesday, working on the flexibility, work on the kicking, work on the punching, work on combinations, the way I do it. And the whole thing is to give ideas. Every one of us is built differently. We have different strengths. We have different weaknesses. All of us are built differently. We have different psychological outlooks on why we do what we do. How are we going to do the same technique the same way? But if I can show you how my side kick or my round kick or my hook kick works for me, maybe you can change it. Maybe you can play with it. Maybe you can modify it and make some of it work for you. And that's what it's for. Most of us, when we sparred, if we were good at sparring, we had maybe at the most 5 techniques. That's all I ever had in my entire career. Side kick, round kick, hook kick, a back fist, and a ridge hand. That's it. All with the front hand and the front leg. And it works for me perfectly. And so take those and change them and play with them. That's why we're taught so many different techniques. Not to use all of them, but to use the ones that work for us.
And so if people are watching right now, including the 4 of us, and we want to come and join you for that, where do we find that? How do we sign up for that?
Bill at superfoot.com. Just check out superfootsystem.com.
Great.
Superfootsystem.com. My guy is Jim Ginter. It's like $60 for 6 weeks.
Awesome.
But in Canadian, it'd be like 6,000 or something like that.
Yep. And it's a blood oath.
Firstborn.
That we by the way, Robert just put that up. Thank you for that, Robert. Anything else you want to leave us with, Sensei? Any parting thoughts?
Have fun. I mean, a lot of times, martial artists, we get into the aspect of thinking that what we do or what somebody else does or what our instructors is just the absolute God's end. It was understanding where it came from. It was technique designed by samurai number 1 to defeat the enemy, by the Chinese to protect the monks. Fighting has always been in this world, and we have a way of doing it that is fun. There's rules, but it's still fun. And I love sparring, and I love the training. And if I couldn't do it, one of those things probably. But, even with my wife, we play around back and forth. We got the cat cactus out here, and I was teaching her the other day how to throw that roundhouse kick by getting the knee up a little bit higher and being a little quick. So have fun. Just have a blast and change things, play with it, modify it, so it works for you.
Thanks, Sensei.
Thank you.
I don't want to end this.
Have a
I
great
don't think
time.
any of us do, but we appreciate your time and everything you said.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sensei Wallace.
Thank you so much.
Guys,
Thank you.
Good
Good
night,
night,
everybody.
everybody. We'll see you next week for Sensei Tarian. Mwah.
thank you.
See you soon.